if you did not get a chance to participate in that, it is available asynchronously, as will all 3 sessions. They'll be available through the registration link that you, or the website that had the registration where you first joined up. So we've got a few norms, if you could please mute. And then if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to put the question in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And we will be recording this session. So if you prefer not to have your video screen on, that's completely fine. That's up to you. We recognize that there's a wide range of skills and knowledge of people participating. If this session turns out to not meet your needs, we understand if you do leave. So, sometimes that happens. And I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to introduce Denise Harris, who's the director of the Career Development Center and really the driving force of DEFT 2.0 and these 3 sessions, which we're so fortunate to be able to offer in this particular format. We can record it, and then we can make sure that it's accessible to lots of different people, whether they're able to be here today or not. So I'm going to turn it over to Denise, and she's going to introduce the panelists.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm so excited again to be welcoming you all to session 2. Our last session was held last Wednesday, and we will finalize the workshop series next Wednesday, same time, to continue with our substitute teacher toolbox. So please make sure that you mark your calendars for next week as well. I did want to welcome our panelists, and I will be serving as a facilitator of our conversation today. So please be sure to, if you have any pressing questions, we're going to put them in the chat. We also have some pre-prepared questions as you kind of are listening and thinking of some questions to get us started. I will introduce our panelists. Mr. Maloney has earned his bachelor's degree in special education from Buffalo State College and a master's degree from Bowling Green State University in special education and educational administration. Mr. Maloney retired after 44 years in public school education. For 14 years, he was a special education teacher and a principal and a superintendent in Ohio, employed by a variety of country boards of developmental disabilities. He returned to Western New York and for 7 years was a special education supervisor for Erie One BOCES, serving students with learning disabilities and emotional disturbance. Following that wonderful opportunity, he became the director of special education for the Clarence Central School District for 16 years, serving about 800 students with disabilities. He ended his career with the Maryvale Union Free School District as assistant superintendent of curriculum and staff development, where he was also responsible for the supervision and evaluation of all principals in the district, with managing the district's professional development program, and is currently teaching at Buffalo State right now. Brianna Ware is a kindergarten teacher for the Buffalo Public Schools. Her journey in education started at Buffalo State College, where she received her bachelor's in early education. Upon completion of her degree, she moved to Houston, Texas for her first teaching position. She spent 4 years in Texas, where she taught 1st, 2nd, and 4th grade. It was in Houston that she was designated as a Kagan campus trainer. She has also been recognized as the 2019 HAA BSE Educator of the Year. Eventually, Brianna became homesick, and we're so excited that she returned here to Western New York. She spent time as a 5th and 6th grade math and science teacher at Western New York Maritime Charter School before she returned to Buffalo Public. And last but certainly not least is Megan Kavanaugh, a teacher candidate in the art education post-baccalaureate program here at Buffalo State, and holds a Master in Fine Arts from Brooklyn College and a Bachelor in Arts from Buffalo State College. Megan has been a substitute teacher in the Buffalo Public School System for 3 years. She has demonstrated classroom management and adaptability while working with diverse students with varying needs. So I am going to actually stop my share, and I'm going to welcome our wonderful panelists today. And I'm going to just start them off by asking Mr. Maloney if he could start us off and say, is there anything that I missed in your bio that you wanted to share with our wonderful participants today about your educational and your career journey that led you to this point?
Well, I guess I'll never say that it's over because it's never over. And education just keeps me very young and alive. As I was looking at the paragraph, I'm like, oh, they're probably thinking I'm as old as God in regards to all the experience. So I guess what I would say to people is just continue with your journey and take every opportunity you can take in the field of education.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Brianna, what can you add to this conversation? Tell me a little bit that I missed in your bio that brought you to this point.
I think the biggest piece is just being brave enough to take risks, because a lot of times we can be really afraid, but when we say yes, that's when our dreams come true. So if there's something that you're looking for, that's my biggest piece. Just be brave.
I love that. I love that advice. Thank you so much. And Megan, anything that I missed or anything you would like to add about your personal or professional career journey up to this point?
Sure. So I feel like I've really just started my journey. So I've been substitute teaching while getting my post back. So I guess subbing has really helped me learn a lot about teaching. Like I've been learning about like the theory of education, and then later on I'm subbing, and then I'm like seeing that theory come to life.
That's amazing. So we're going to stick with you, Megan, for a second. And as you kind of just brought up theory and just kind of seeing that kind of theory come to life, that's such a powerful moment. But kind of thinking about your role as a substitute, what are some of your successes? And what have been some of the challenges that you've kind of faced along this substitute teaching journey?
Sure. So I'd like to say I've had a whole range of experiences. I've had some really great days. And then I've had some days where I just get in my car, I'm like, oh. But let's focus on, there are more success stories for sure. So like just on a day to day, a success is when a teacher leaves a really good lesson plan and I get through the lesson plan, the students are doing meaningful work, there are no issues and everything goes off without a hitch. Those are just like small successes. But overall for subbing, a success that's really helped me throughout student teaching is this idea that I've really cultivated this teaching personality. So now that I'm student teaching, I don't have to like think about my confidence as a teacher. Now I can just focus on other things like my lesson plans, because now I feel more comfortable in the classroom. And also now I know kind of like which age ranges I like. So that's been also a very good success. I kind of know how to talk to children now, which has been really cool.
Excellent. Brianna, what would you say are some of your successes and some of your challenges?
Sorry about that. I would say as far as successes are concerned, I've been able to, well, I haven't subbed. So this is from a classroom teacher's perspective, but I've been able to adapt. It seems like I've been a first year teacher since I've started teaching. Every year I'm teaching a different grade. So it's challenging, but on the flip side, I can see, it is doable. So, we might get comfortable once you are substituting or once you do accept your first position and you might feel like, okay, this is it for me. You might feel afraid, but it's possible. So that was a success, realizing that I can adapt. And the challenging part is really just mastering the curriculum enough so that I can support all of my students the way they need it. Every time I change grade levels, because I think it takes a couple years to truly become comfortable with one grade level.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Mr. Maloney, from your experience, talking about, the depth and breadth of your career, what are some challenges and some successes that have stood out to you?
I always forget to unmute. When it comes to looking at successes, I have to kind of agree with Briana that you really need to take risks, because what you find as a teacher and then also as an administrator, education is just changing all the time. So you never really get into a rut. There's always new challenges, new adventures, and I guess when you look at successes, I think the beauty of teaching now is you have a whole group of maybe people at your own grade level that are sharing a concern, maybe a whole group of people on the floor that you work on, or it could be the whole school building. So when you're looking at a challenge and you're trying to turn that into a success, I'm always telling teachers what you want to do is reach out to the other teachers that are facing that same challenge and then just take the risk and really work together because everybody brings certain strengths to the table. So when it comes to successes, I think that's the beauty of successes. And then with challenges, you just don't want to, sometimes you get down about it and sometimes you kind of wallow in it. Well, just don't, okay? Every day is a new day. And, I'm sure Megan, every day when you get a call to a substitute teaching position, of course, you probably hear good things about the building and bad things about the building, but I'm sure when Megan walks in there, she's really trying to shower herself with all the positives that are going to come, because you certainly don't want to wallow in, I should have done it this way, or I should have done it that way. So that would be, that's how I kind of look at successes and challenges.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. So in your opinion, we'll stick with you, Mr. Maloney. In your opinion, what can a substitute teacher do, though, to make a great impression for their cooperating teacher, their visiting teacher? They're leaving for the day. What are those things that just stand out when you return to your classroom the next day where you're just like, this person was awesome? What do you think?
Okay, I'll make it real concise. Follow the substitute folder. Teachers put a lot of time in. In fact, teachers don't even want to be sick, because they'll say to me, it takes them longer to get the substitute teacher folder ready for the substitute coming in. And you can tell, like, you'll actually have teachers that'll say, I don't want that person back because I don't think he or she even opened up the substitute folder. So strong words from me as a former administrator and teacher: follow the folder and then leave little notes of how did things go, both positive and negative.
Okay. And Brianna, and what are your thoughts on that as well? Like when you leave, when you are gone for a day, and I know that you all hate being sick, and I hope it doesn't happen too often, but what kind of leaves a positive impression for you?
Of course, if the substitute follows the plans, it's wonderful. But in addition to that, if the classroom looks like it did when the substitute came, that's really great. And of course, there's always going to be behavior issues. It's a new person. But if the substitute leaves notes about positive behavior, like, oh, Johnny was amazing today, it's like, we can start the day off on a positive note instead of saying, you know what, Johnny, I heard you gave the substitute. So positivity is really good.
Oh, I love that advice. So like leave the positive things that happen and not just a list of all the negative. And,
Right.
and a little bit of a different question for you. Like, how do you feel like you leave a good impression? Like, are there certain things that you do so that when, they're like, oh, Megan was here today. I'm so happy she was our sub.
Well, what I like to do is, if it's a half day, I like to show up maybe 15 minutes early, really introduce myself, shake the person's hand, get a lay of the room. And then if it's a different day, I like going out of my way and communicating with the children and creating like a community with the children so that those teachers know that I care about those students, and definitely leaving a positive note about the students. It's like one of my favorite things, like so-and-so was such a great helper. And I'm noticing a lot of teachers will say, if you need help, seek out such and such person. So that's helpful for me. So I know which kids to depend on, and I'm letting teachers know which kids I can depend on.
Awesome. Great. So Brianna, this question is going to be for you. You made a really great point about, leaving the room kind of like you found it, hearing something positive. I love that. So what do teachers really want and need from a substitute, when they return back? I know that, leaving a great first impression, leaving notes, but at the end of the day, what are you really looking for?
Well, honestly, we just want the work done. It does take a long time to plan lessons, and depending upon, where you're at, I think it's usually well known if the substitutes follow the lesson plans. And for the most part, substitutes do. So that's like the best thing that could happen, because if we can't be there, we want to make sure our students are still learning and their needs are being met and they're growing. Because I feel super guilty if I get sick. Like, oh no.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best thing that they can do. Just follow the plan.
Awesome. And Jim, anything that you would like to add to that as well?
No, I would just wholeheartedly agree. And I think especially now with COVID, time is just so limited with kids that we just don't want to lose one day of instruction. So if the work can be completed, like Brianna just said, I think that's critically important.
Absolutely. Awesome. Megan, and just to kind of finalize, wrap up, anything else that you would like to add regarding, you know, what you like to make sure that you absolutely do? You've all given such great advice about leaving positive notes, keeping the room straight, following the plan, doing the work. Anything else that we're missing?
I really think that's it. If you're in the school, maybe you could see the teacher the next day and just give like a verbal affirmation about the day, and usually focusing on the positive, because you want to leave a positive effect. So the teacher, when they take off the next day, they don't have like some weird worry in their mind, like, oh no, no, no. So it's always good to really reinforce that positive.
Awesome. Thank you. So now we're going to ask for some advice. Would you suggest accepting a long-term substitute position, or should you only apply for full-time teaching opportunities? What do you think? Anyone can jump in on this question.
I guess I personally would say if you're looking for a job, apply for everything. And especially now, there's so many opportunities. You'll hear back and then you'll be able to weigh out your options. There may be some educators who want to see, teachers with more experience, and there may be, administrators who are open to new teachers. So I would just try everything, and then you can make the choice instead of the choice being made for you.
Great, thank you.
I would totally agree with that. I would apply for anything that's available. And I think sometimes people kind of shy away from long-term substitute teaching positions, but that's your foot in the door. That's a way of really interviewing for a position every day that you're in the building, because as people get to know you, watch you, work with you, I know in most of the districts that I worked in, we would go to our long-term substitutes when probationary appointments became available first, because we knew them. And so many times you really don't know what's out there. So most districts, I think, would go with hiring their long-term substitutes first. But the other catch to that is, don't do it for too long, because people get used to you in those positions and you're filling a need for them. So it's, and I can't give you like a magic date of how many months you should be doing that. But I would definitely go for every position, but don't be afraid of taking on a long-term sub position.
Excellent. Megan, did you want to add something?
Sure. So I'm right now at that stage where I am applying to everything. So I'm trying to think, if I saw my dream school with a long-term sub position, that might be something I'd be more willing to take. And I think for other people who are applying to jobs, maybe a long-term position works better with your schedule. Maybe you can't commit to your full-time job. So maybe this is like your launching off pad.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to transition into some advice. So what advice would you give current substitute teachers who want to transition into a full-time teaching position, but at a specific school? What's your advice on that?
Oh, I think Megan's talking.
I was muted, I'm sorry. So if it's at a specific school, really, if you get to know the administrators, the teachers, and they start to like you and there's a position available, you're the one they're going to think about. So, I mean, maybe that is the route to take. That's my only advice for that.
Excellent. Brianna, did you want to go next?
Sure. And to build on what Megan is saying, because it does sound kind of scary, to make people like you to get a job. I think what people really look for and what makes educators and fellow teachers like substitutes or newcomers are qualities like, making sure, well, from a substitute perspective, I'm sorry, good classroom management skills, and that can be hard when it's a new group. So it could be something as simple as bringing in your own index cards and like little stickers, and everybody puts their name on their index card. And at the beginning of the day, okay, I have a special treat for the friend who gets the most stickers, and you just pass them out. Oh, I love how you're on task. Oh, thank you for being courteous. Just keeping them excited, engaged, so that you don't have to constantly ask for help. And then at the end of the day, it could be something simple like, okay, you get to sit in the teacher's chair because you got the most stickers and you did so amazing. So really good classroom management. Sometimes the lesson plans are not what's expected. Of course, teachers do pour their hearts out into the lesson plans. We want the best for our students. But sometimes if you're really sick, you're just like, okay, do these pages in the workbook, spend some time on iReady, and I need to get to the doctor. So in those cases, it's really helpful if you maybe have some tricks up your sleeve, like a game that you brought, or just something that you can do to engage them. That's really helpful, because then the kids will say, oh, she was amazing, or he was awesome. We played this really great game. And so those are things that will help educators, administrators, teachers just love you if you have good classroom management and you can engage the kids. That's it.
I guess from an administrative perspective, there's just like 3 thoughts that I would have there. When you find the school you want to be in, and you're probably hearing this as candidates all the time, you really need to network with the culture of the building. And don't just network with the teachers and the administrators. I have to tell you, you want to get to know that school secretary as well as you can, because remember, she has the ear of the building principal, okay? And a lot of times principals will come out and say, okay, of the subs we have, who do you think could fulfill this position? And many secretaries will step up and actually advocate for you. And then if you seem to be a recurring substitute coming into that building, volunteer for things that are beyond the normal day. So once we return to normal, when we maybe have a family night, a PTO meeting, go to those meetings, because what you're doing is you're showing the other teachers and the administrators that you really want to join the family that school represents. So the 2 ideas would be to volunteer as much as you can, and then to really network with people in a real positive way.
Thank you. That's great advice. We talked a little bit about that during session 1, going above and beyond, trying to get involved and networking. So session 3 is actually about building the substitute teacher toolkit. So I love what you said, Brianna, about the index cards and the stickers, volunteering, knowing when the PTO meetings are, So what other little gems or pieces of advice can you share with us on how to build that toolkit? Like, if there is 15 minutes left at the end of the day and the lesson plan's done and the room is clean, what do we do? What advice can you give us?
Is that one for me?
Yes, definitely.
Or anybody? Usually the kids love free choice, and it doesn't have to be non-academic. Free choice could be, okay, you can read in the library, you can play a word sort. It depends on, of course, what grade level you're teaching, but you can get creative with the resources that are available, whether it's virtual or in person. And as long as it's phrased as long as you're choosing the activities for free choice, and they love that. Reading a story is always good. Independent reading is always good. Just something where they're enjoying themselves and they leave for the day with a smile on their face. That's really helpful.
Awesome. Megan, what are some of your tricks?
So something that I do usually all the time that always works, it's very engaging. It's this website called Kahoots. So it's a game. So I usually like to keep it on task. So if we were reading a book, we'll play a game. It's like trivia. So everyone plays on their phone and we all play along, and it gets fun. Nothing like a little competition at the end of the day to make time go by. So yeah, I like to do Kahoots, community games like that.
Excellent. Anything to add? Any other little gems of wisdom from Jim or anything else that you came to mind?
Near the end of the day, I think as a substitute teacher, you're probably feeling pretty tired. And in some classes, the kids aren't feeling very tired. So I think anytime you can involve them in any kind of a movement activity right at their table or their desk, I think that's important. And then also if you're a new substitute teacher, kind of going back to what Megan said a while ago, creating community, you could also have them start to describe themselves. I know I've seen a lot of teachers have the children say one truth about themselves and one lie about themselves. And then you have kids and you kind of guess what the answer is. And that seems to fill the time pretty quickly. And it's a nice message to the kids that, you know, you want to know about them. So I think sometimes that's a nice way to end the day. And then hopefully the school will be calling you back for that classroom.
Excellent. I just thought of a question off the top of my head. You know, if you're going into a classroom, you know, multiple days of the week, different kids, you know, any tricks for being able to get to know students' names quickly? I recently read a study that said, you know, if the students know that you're taking the time to get to know their names, even if it's a quick, you know, it just really increases behavior management. I know, Brianna, you talked a little bit about, you know, classroom management, but, you know, that's a lot to get to know, especially if you're like in a 6th or 7th grade where you could potentially be meeting 100 students, you know, in one day. But any tricks for our young professionals on how they can maybe get to know those students as quickly as they can and retain that information? Yeah, Brianna, if you wanted to go first, if you had any, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, you're okay. So 2 things. Name tents, there's always paper in a school. So they can just fold their name, write it nice and clearly, and they can decorate it. It can be a short thing, even put a timer up so it doesn't take forever. If it's a Zoom call or some type of virtual, that's really wonderful because we have their names now. And then the last thing, if they are going to respond to a question, you can have them stand up, say their name, and then present their voice to the class. So just building public speaking skills, but also learning their names.
That's great. Thank you. Megan, what are some tricks you use?
So I really like to take my time with roll call. So I want to make sure that I know their name and that I'm saying their name correctly. That's a big thing. So yeah, I just take my time with attendance, and I usually get a sheet for every period. So I'm going through attendance several times with the same class. So I'm making sure I'll say it again. So every like 40 minutes, I go through roll call and I get everyone's name. So after a while, you do sort of memorize everyone. But it's crucial to make sure you know how to say everyone's name, especially when you're in a school like Buffalo, because you don't want to give that impression that you don't really care about them or their culture.
Absolutely. Yes. Learn the appropriate pronunciation and, you know, ask if you have to, but remember it. And, or, you know, little things like that really do make a difference in part of someone's identity and who they are. Jim, any final tips on remembering students' names?
Well, it's funny because I always thought this was kind of like for little kids, but I even use it at the college level. I'll have kids introduce themselves and then pick an animal with the same letter as their first name. And they really get into it. And it kind of tells you about their personality and how they think. And it's funny with the animal and the child's name, it just helps me. I don't know if it would help other people, but then you can kind of allude to it throughout the day that, that was pretty wolf-like behavior that I saw, from William, and and it ends up being kind of a game. And like I said, I thought adults and kids in middle school wouldn't like it, and they do. It makes it kind of fun.
Absolutely. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about building community as well. So it's an icebreaker, it's a community builder, and it helps us, I'm Dinosaur Denise, kind of remember that. I think I saw a hand go up, and I wanted to make sure that if a student or someone had a question, I wasn't, if you did, please just announce yourself, your name, and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Amaya. So the one thing I wanted to add to the name calling thing, I worked at a preschool, and we had, whenever a new teacher came in, we used to write the kid's name in like tape and then put it on their back, or like you can put it on their front But like, yeah, usually back and like that helped. Like when I first started, that's what they did. And I thought that was cool. So
Excellent, great, thanks. Thanks for sharing that tip. I have one last final question that I've prepared, and then we can definitely so start thinking about what questions you want to ask our amazing panelists. Technology, obviously, as you all know, has just been a huge, huge part of the learning environment, especially this past year. Can you all just share with me briefly, you know, how has it changed your teaching, substitute teaching, your community building, your world? Is there any specific technological skills that you would encourage new professionals coming in to learn? But just talk to me a little bit about technology and what we can do to kind of best prepare ourselves as we go into this new normal. Brianna, why don't we start with you?
So it's just the whole pandemic and adjusting to everything has been extremely challenging. I can adapt, but wow, this is something. If I could give any advice about the technology, it would just be to become familiar with maybe 1 to 3 apps. It's just like learning new vocabulary. Too much and you'll get lost in the sauce. So if you can, of course, you have to use whatever your district or school technology is. But then because there's just so many applications to do everything you could possibly need. So if you just pick 3 and really master those, it helps you to streamline your content and to help you stay organized, but it's also helpful for your students and the parents helping your students. So just really focus in on a couple and let that be. If you can get creative, like I'm using Teams right now, and I just started with Buffalo Public and they had some issues, so I don't have all of my logins, but I've been pulling my materials, putting them in PowerPoint, but just uploading it to Teams or whatever apps I'm using. So that way I'm still using a few different resources, but the students only see one application. So I think I'm talking in circles, but you get the point.
No, that's great. And this is a great time too. There's so many free resources to even teach yourself. And I mean, even something as simple as YouTube has been something I've used even for, you know, higher ed. So that's great. Megan, what would you like to add to that? Any technology advice, suggestions, anything you could add?
Sure. So I would highly suggest persistence, just a persistent mentality. Like for example, on any given day, so right now I'm student teaching at Buffalo Public Schools, the performing arts. So the internet could be down for half the day. Schoology could be down. Teams also could be down. They could be down all at the same time. So you just keep moving along and you just try your best to keep going. You have a good attitude, you're flexible, you give grace to yourself and you give grace to students, especially not really on topic, but like if students can't turn in assignments, like you just need to give them grace. This is such a time right now and we're almost through it. So yeah, persistence during this time of technology wonder.
Yes, thank you for that. I think everyone just, from kindergartners to college students, I think we all just need a little bit of grace because, you know, and I think parallel planning and being flexible, definitely. Technology is great. One of my favorite professors used to say, technology is great when it works. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. And Mr. Maloney, what would you like to add to the technology conversation?
I would agree with both Megan and Brianna, because I know if you take on too many apps, well, you just give up. If you're planning on working in Western New York, you really need to familiarize yourself with Google Classroom. Most districts in Western New York, it's a free service. There's tons and tons of support with Google Classroom, but the expectation will be that you can operate Google Classroom when you come in as a substitute teacher or as a new probationary teacher. And then when I'm out in the classrooms right now, I'm seeing a lot of people using Jamboard at all different age levels, and it seems to be really, really engaging and fun. So that might be another one you want to take a look at, and it's very compatible with Google Classroom, but slow and steady, because talking as the dinosaur here, technology can be really overwhelming. One last comment though, most of the people here are very young people, I would imagine, and technology is like almost second fiddle to you folks. So you clearly have an advantage over veteran teachers. So definitely try and shine as much as possible. If you're in substituting, it's so frustrating for a teacher when she can't turn the board on or something's gone wrong, and then along you come, push 2 buttons and she's up and running. People remember that. So make yourself available to help people with technology problems.
Absolutely. Brianna, go ahead.
So it's like branching off from that, speaking of the advantage, there are so many positions available. And I guess I just wanted to share, if you are looking for a job, I think it's the Erie One BOCES website that's familiar to most of us. I know we just had TRD. I think you can still register for it, but I registered and I just have been hearing from so many people, not just in Buffalo, but it's really an amazing resource. And then I didn't know that you can apply directly to the districts in addition to, TRD and the Erie One BOCES, but because the technology is so challenging, if you want a full-time position, you will have it. So that is the good news. I know when I first finished my degree, that job outlook was not great, and that's what originally brought me to Texas, but there's hope. So you just have to think about where you want to work and apply, because you will find a job.
That's so great to hear, Brianna, especially at this time. I feel like there's a lot of doom and gloom, and I just feel like you've all had inspired me and motivated us to seek out those opportunities, to go above and beyond. So now we're going to open it up to other questions. I mean, really, the sky's the limit. Interview questions, advice, teaching tips, please. Either pop them in the chat or, please ask our panelists.
Denise, could I just jump in for a moment?
Absolutely.
Just to follow up on Jim's point about the Google tools and Google Classroom, we at the website where you registered for this session, we've also got 3 sessions that were excellent on how to use Google tools. Professor Chris Shively presented, and he presented with several practicing teachers and teacher candidates who have been really successful in using Google tools. So I encourage you to go and look at those asynchronous versions. They're each 1 hour. So in 1 hour, you could learn a lot. Jamboard is discussed in one of them. And I'll just put the link for the registration in the chat.
That's awesome. I think the other one, at least that I have 2 children, one in middle school and one in elementary school, and they do a lot on Flipgrid as well. I don't know if anyone has experience with that, but that's been something that I've actually enjoyed watching her do. And it's exciting to see my own personal kids get excited about learning different things. So other questions for our panelists? You can go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can just pop it in the chat. Awesome. There's also, okay, great. So I think Breezy has a question. It says, what makes a resume stand out from others? So this is a really great question, Breezy, because like Brianna just said, we just had teacher recruitment days, which was 100% virtual. We had over 102 districts that attended, 570 candidates, 171 were from Buffalo State. So if you think about that, yes, there were jobs, but how do you stand out among those 570 candidates? So that is definitely something that, small plug for the Career Development Center, but I'm also going to turn it over to Mr. Maloney and see, as someone that has done hiring professionally for a living, let's talk to him and hear, what are some of his advice that we can really stand out when people are looking at those resumes.
What you want to do is research the district that you're hopefully going to be interviewing with. Of course, we all have our foundation resume, but what you want to do is either connect with people in the district, talk to people about the district, possibly if you know a parent who lives in the district, trying to get a feel for what are they really looking for. Now, as a new graduate with little or no experience, my advice to you, don't do a chronological type of a resume based on experiences, because I hate to say it, you don't have it. Okay, you've got student teaching, babysitting. Okay, that's not going to get you a job. So what you want to do is research the district and then try and match the qualities that they're looking for. And then the other thing is, don't get too cute. Cute only goes so far. Okay, like people will possibly use a little bit of color. And then the last thing, make sure you have somebody who you really trust to read your resume, because if there's one misspelled word, if there's some grammar issue, that will knock you out of the hopper immediately. Because a lot of, when I was in Clarence, we were assigned to 25 resumes on a monthly basis that we had to review and prioritize. Now it's not that bad anymore, because there's really a teacher shortage going on right now. So I know a lot of the districts don't have that kind of depth and breadth of resumes. But what you really want to do is try and match qualities or characteristics of what they're looking for and what's going to make you look different from another candidate. But do not do a chronology of experience. It's not going to serve you well at all.
Yeah, I just want to echo to, as far as a career development perspective, again, sometimes people think because you are applying to be an elementary school teacher or an art teacher, you want it to be bells and whistles and colors and graphics. No, a lot of times even a computer is going to be screening it before a human screens it. So you don't want anything that's going to kick you out of the system. Content, skills, accomplishments, technology, differentiated education. Use your buzzwords, use your education words, mirror them to the job description. That will hopefully at least get you to the next step of their hiring process. Excellent question. Anyone else want to jump in on that? Go ahead.
Can I just jump one more time?
Sure, yes, please.
Thoroughly look at the district's website, because that's where a lot of the hidden things are. And if you thoroughly look at their website, you'll know what they value in the district, the pictures they use, the verbiage they use, the principal's welcoming message. Take a look at all of that.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Brianna.
I actually just wanted to ask Mr. Maloney, how do you feel about pictures? I've seen some teachers that I know applying for jobs, and they have pictures of themselves on their resume. Is that too cute, or is that okay?
I don't really have an opinion on it. One nice thing I like it, I think it personalizes the resume, because you actually see who the person is. But I really don't have a feeling either way in regards to what really annoys me is when people use like a really weird font and you can't read it, and they think or every paragraph is a different color. It's like, it needs to be professional. Okay, we're professionals, so your resume. But picture wise, I don't really have a feeling either way.
Good to know. Thanks.
Typically, you just want to be careful if you put a picture on your resume, just because it could open up some kind of legal issues regarding, oh, you didn't hire me because I'm older, younger, you know what I mean? I'm female, I'm a mix. So, again, I always say stick with a consistent kind of basic formula. Again, let your experience and the skills that you've developed. Again, for the one person that likes it, kind of what Mr. Maloney was saying, for the one person that likes it, there's 12 that don't. And again, I always am going to err you on the side of like, let's just be as consistent as possible with, let your creativity, your individuality come out in your lesson planning, your portfolio, that's where you can come shining through. Other questions for our panelists? Any questions about the interview process or about, again, advice, tools, tips? And again, you can go ahead and pop it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, not a problem.
I have a question that sometimes students ask me that I'm curious about. They ask if they should sub in more than one district, or should you commit to one district or school, or, you know, however it works, but, or is it better to have the range of experience across districts?
I think it serves you well to do a range from two different perspectives. I think from a learning perspective, if you have urban experience, rural experience, and suburban experience, I think you can talk about that in your interview with a variety. You can also, it's just a nice way to be able to compare and get a feel for the different cultures in all of the districts. So I would say try and get out to, you know, not as many districts as possible, but I would say at least 3 to 4 different districts.
Would Megan or Brianna want to add to that, or? Go ahead, Megan.
So I was wondering that too, as I was substitute teaching. So I work with Buffalo, but I had an interview at a different district. And I debated whether or not I could handle working at both, but it is a lot to be driving here and here. So it's just more practical for me to work with one district. And when you start working at one school, they just keep calling you and calling you. So and you never want to turn down a job. So if you can work that day, then you're going to want to say yes, because when you start to say no, that's when they're going to find another substitute teacher.
That's great.
So I really like focusing on just one school or one district.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like, you know, there's benefits to both. So you can't really go wrong if you kind of diversify, or if you kind of know you only want to work, or you're, you know, geographically, again, students, you know, you might literally be in walking distance to 4 or 5 school districts that you can kind of, you know, work at. So we have a great question in the chat about advice for writing a mission statement. I'm going to expand that as well and maybe talk a little bit about your teaching philosophy. I know a lot of times we're asked to write these kind of statements. How do you make yours unique? How do you start? How do you talk about it? Thoughts on that? Brianna, why don't we start with you on this one?
I think when you are writing a mission statement or your teaching philosophy, you have to go back to why you want to do this in the first place, and that will make it so much easier. And it really helps me, because this is a tough question to answer, but I kind of do it like an interview. I'll just talk to myself and record it on my phone. Okay, Brianna, why do you want to be a teacher? And then it just naturally comes out, because when you're thinking and reflecting like why you're interested in this field, then you'll have your mission statement.
I actually think that's a really good tip. Like, you know, because sometimes do you ever talk out loud and say, oh, that was so great. What did I just say? And then you can't remember it. You're writing a paper or something. So I love that idea. Megan, how did you develop your mission statement, your teaching philosophy? How were you able to portray that during your interviews?
Right, great question. So it was really a lot of reflecting and what is important to me. Like, how do I create lesson plans? Who am I in the classroom? And for me, there was just this theme of empowerment and power. Like, I want lesson plans that empower my students. So I really just focused everything on empowerment. So I guess, like, really, what are your values as a teacher, and how can you write about it? Think about the lesson plans you're writing. Are there common themes that you're always incorporating in your teaching? So that's what worked for me, but I'm sure Jim probably has more experience.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like, Jim, kind of wrap this up for us. You know, when you're interviewing candidates and you're hearing their philosophies, does it ever get old to hear the same old, like, well, I want to work with students, I love kids, or is that what you want to hear? You know, what kind of does set a candidate apart from when they're writing and crafting their mission statement or their education philosophy?
I guess what I'm looking for is authenticity. Many times you'll get people that I sometimes think they're using a formula where, okay, it has to include this and it has to include that, and you're ready to fall asleep at the beginning of the interview because you know they have no feelings with it or no value. So I think when you're doing it, you know, to agree with what Megan and Brianna are saying, it's got to be loaded with feelings and values. Why do you come to school every day? And I love Brianna's, the way she tape records it, because that's what you want to hear, because you do hear a lot. It's one of your introductory questions of what your teaching philosophy. And when people say it's because I like kids, it's like, well, I'm glad you chose teaching, because we have a lot of them around this building. So that's not going to float in my boat, but it's feelings and values and that kind of thing, and what's really going to sustain you for 15, 20 years in the profession.
Yeah, that's awesome. Even through my lens as a career counselor, I can't tell you how many times, regardless of the position you're applying for, people say to me, I want to help people, and I think that that's great. But it's like hardworking. It's, again, what is it about you? I love what Megan said about finding your values, like the word empower. I haven't really heard that from a lot of teacher candidates working with them this past semester. I've heard other things. So that was really cool. And I feel like that kind of connects you with like a different spin on what your philosophy is. So I'm really glad. Thank you for asking this question in the chat. I appreciate it. That was a great question. It looks like we have time for about one more question. Is there anything kind of on your mind, pressing? I would like to ask the candidates one last final piece of advice, but before we go into that, I want to make sure that if anyone, I know you're kind of sitting there, oh, is there a question? Go ahead and ask it. I know, trust me, you'll be so happy you did.
Can I just bounce off of that?
Yes, absolutely.
So in our mission statement, should we touch upon our teaching philosophy? And also, what about in our cover letter? Would you recommend touching upon it then or no?
Great question. What does everyone think?
I personally think that your cover letter and your mission statement can all kind of flow together. I used to be so afraid of writing mission statements, but I don't know, something just clicked and I feel a lot more comfortable. It's like you're just presenting the best version of yourself. And in that is, okay, this is why I want to be a teacher. And this is how I feel about teaching. This is what I like to do as a teacher. And this is why I'll be so amazing at your school. So please hire me.
Megan, did you want to add something
And
to that?
I would totally agree with that. I would totally agree with that. It's, of course, you don't want your cover letter to go more than one page because, busy administrators aren't going to be reading a lengthy 3-page cover letter. But if you can just naturally put that in there with, and you don't even have to say, this is my teaching philosophy, like Brianna's saying, you just kind of put it in there and then explain it a little bit and almost like bait their curiosity. I think if you can kind of do that, it might catch somebody's attention that, geez, I'd like to hear more about that. And how does it compare to the philosophy of our school here? Don't play the game of matching the philosophy of the school to your philosophy. You will fall flat on your face. People will see through that right away. So don't be writing or telling people what you think they want to hear.
I have a question about the cover letter. Like, do we have to have a cover letter, or does it make you not stand out if you don't have a cover letter? Like, is it expected of you? Just like resume is?
In every district I've worked in, cover letter was part of the packet.
Okay.
Yeah, just to jump in on Winnie, Rick, that's where most of the Western New York jobs are. Cover letter is mandatory. You can't even apply to the job without one.
And just to add to that, oh, sorry, Brianna, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's some really rich examples online. Of course, you don't want to use their wording, but just to help you feel more comfortable, that's what I did, just to get a peek. And you can be super specific to whatever job you're applying for. And then it can help your creative mind start flowing.
Yes, cover letters, again, I think sometimes people minimize their importance. That is something that the Career Development Center can help you write. Your resume is everything you've done in the past and you've accomplished. I like to think of the cover letter as all the skills you're able to bring moving forward in your passion and excitement for the field. So it's the only time in the hiring process up to the interview where you actually get to narrate your voice and use your words to say why you're the best candidate. So definitely take the time to kind of craft that and really vocalize and narrate who you are and what you bring to that district. Again, very mindful of the time. So I just wanted to let each of our panelists start with their closing words, closing piece of advice to kind of wrap up this session. So why don't we start with Jim? Why don't you finish us off with some closing words of advice for our professionals that are kind of participating in this workshop series?
I guess a closing comment I would have would be to seize every opportunity right now in your life. Don't be afraid to take risks. In my career, there were no jobs when I graduated from Buffalo State in New York, and I went to another state at age 21 and stayed there for 14 years. So take any risk in every opportunity, and don't close the door on those opportunities, because you're only young once, and I have to tell you, it's easier to take a risk when you're young than when you're looking like I do in the Zoom screen right now.
Oh, Megan, what are your final closing pieces of advice for our wonderful students today?
So I would say, no matter if you're being a sub, long-term sub, or you find your teaching position, always have a positive attitude and you'll be fine. Just every day is a new day. You can start on a new slate.
I love that. Thank you so much. And Brianna, final closing piece of advice from you.
I'm sure you already know what grade you want to teach, and you might know where you want to teach. And that opportunity may not be available, but there will be some others. And from someone who has really gone out of my comfort zone, I can tell you it's okay. So if you want to teach kinder and it's not available, but third or second is, you may not feel prepared, and I usually don't, but you'll figure it out. There are so many people who want to see you succeed at Buffalo State College. You'll meet new people at wherever you're placed. And there's the internet. Everybody's a blogger now, so you will figure it out. It will be great. If you're feeling nervous, just go for it. And that saying yes in those moments will help you get to your dream school, because maybe they want someone with experience, but because you said yes to the other position, you'll be, I forgot the word I'm looking for, but maybe they'll hire you in the future once you boost up your resume. So I think that's my last piece. Just be brave and go for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Can we give our wonderful panelists a round of applause, a virtual round of applause? I know that I've definitely gotten some great information. And so I'm going to turn it over to our PDS coordinator to kind of wrap up our session. I think she put an evaluation in the chat, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the people who participated, for Denise for hosting, and for our wonderful panelists. And it's so nice to see those of you who I know from other places. And so thank you for joining and being part of this. We hope you'll come next week for the third session. And please also check out that website for other PD possibilities, asynchronous ones that are already there, and then new ones that are coming up for perhaps that will be of interest to you. Good luck. We're so proud of you, and we're so excited to hear what directions you take as you move forward in your career, and how wonderful that all of you are planning to be teachers. So we're really excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
Oh, thank you so much. This was great.
It was really good. And oh my goodness.